Before we begin, thank you very much to Justin C. for joining the Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/TJOmega. Thank you once again to all of my patrons for supporting me and keeping the channel alive and ensuring that I can keep the videos coming. You guys are literally the reason I am not taking a paid promotion from Raid Shadow Legends. And yes, check my Twitter account. I actually did get that offer. I refuse it, and I will refuse it every time because thanks to you, I don't need their money. But thank you guys very much. You're literally saving my soul. I thought I'd do a few videos here looking back at some of the more obscure Transformer toy lines that I think have fallen through the cracks and have been mostly forgotten over the years because we've had so many retro lines, we've had so many sub-series and exclusives, and it's getting chaotic. But I want to take you back to when it was a simpler time, about the mid-2000s or so, and we were enjoying the Unicron trilogy at the time, and then the Universe repaint line came out, and it was weird to us as Transformer fans to have two toy lines running at the same time. That was already a really weird thing. And then to come find out in Japan, they had their own version of Universe, a line full of repaints, but they went the extra mile. That was Robot Masters. And this line, you had to be there to realize just how exciting this toy line was, and see how everyone just clamored over it. So just as a little insight to what this is. So, largely, it was an excuse to repaint a bunch of figures, as well as release a few molds that were never done in Japan. So, for instance, Tasmanian Kid in Japan, Snarl over here, was repainted into Bound Rogue, which is always a neat name. It makes no sense, but I like the name. And yes, he does look very Sonic the Hedgehog. He does not roll into a ball. It actually goes very, very slow, but it is interesting nonetheless. I had this one. This was one of the first ones from the series I grabbed. And you'll notice they added, there were translucent green molded weapons with a lot of chrome that were added to all of them. Most of them were very awkward. You can see Bound Rogue technically can't hold his. Because Bound Rogue has this weird thing where you actually have to plug his weapon into his forearm above the wrist, and then rotate his hand down, and it kind of looks like he's holding it. And then in this case, this one had an ammo clip that came down, so he couldn't even do that because it got in the way. Not sure why they gave him that weapon when he couldn't even wield it properly. It's glued to the back of his hand here. But still, fun little repaints like that. They did they did Armadillo as one called Psycho Orb, which I always love the name Psycho Orb. Here's another one, RID Tow Line, or Wrecker Hook in Japan, redecoed more like a Universe-style repaint, where it's all about high energy, being very eye-catching. The weird thing here is he did switch factions, and in the weird way that Japanese timelines run, this is the same Wrecker Hook from Car Robots, just mind-wiped and choosing to side with the Decepticons instead. It's a bizarre little story he's got going on. Actually, strangely fascinating when I went back to look. Why is he the exact same character? Why is this still Wrecker Hook? And then to find out, he wasn't mind controlled or reprogrammed. He just forgot who he was and decided the Decepticons were better. Interesting. I think that makes him a little bit more interesting than your typical faction switcher. He didn't have a change of heart. He just had a reevaluation. So this was also, pretty typical of the line. Now, it wasn't just new stuff. This was one of the first lines that was catering to fans and collectors because they were doing a lot of homages as well. Doesn't this look familiar? Now, the name of him is R-Blade, but back then he was the closest you could get to a modern Jetfire toy. It is a repaint of a Saber jet, which I believe had a limited release in Japan, so this was kind of a big deal. And yeah, I think it looks pretty slick in the black and the red and white. I think it actually looks really, really cool. Another one I had, Man, I don't think I have any of my Robot Masters anymore, and I regret that. And you'll see why. If you're unfamiliar with the line, you will see why here in a bit. But they did homage stuff like this as well. They redid the Machine Wars Mirage mold into his proper color scheme, and it actually looks quite good. I mean, of course, you're going to paint an IndyCar blue and white. It's going to look good to a Transformer collector, but the mold takes to it pretty well. Again, interesting way of getting some repaints out in Japan, considering, it's repaint lines is not something they did often. Also, they threw Robot Master all over these things. You can see it on his spoiler as well, including his actual serial number, which I guess makes up for the lack of sponsors and numbers, etc. Okay, we'll give him that. But it wasn't just G1. It wasn't just G1 homages. They went a couple other places here. This guy should look familiar. Remember, this was 2004 when this came out, so Sideways, Double Face here in Robot Masters, was still relatively new, so the fact that he was getting an homage so soon would tell you just how well the character went over. Again, and actually not a bad choice. Like, the head sculpt actually does remind me of one of his heads. Now, they've taken liberties, of course. How can you not? But still, I thought it was really cool that, like, a character so new was already getting homaged in other lines. Now, the thing about Robot Masters was, like, Universe went all over the place in size scales. They had multi-packs to get out basic figures. They did big collector packs for combiners. But the big thing to them was just, like, they went with any size they wanted. They did specialty releases and all that. There really wasn't any limit. Robot Masters generally kept it to small figures, so they were very easy to afford. The biggest one they got was Gigant Bomb here, which is, my mouth is getting dry. The G2 Dreadwing, and Smoke Sniper came out too. Smoke Screen in G2, Smoke Sniper in Robot Masters. I really like this color scheme. I thought this was actually a neat little color. We'd see later on, we'd see like Tread Shot in the Universe line. They had similar colors to this. I don't know if it was a direct homage or not, but I do really like this. The pink head's a little weird. The handlebar mustache thing he's got going on. A couple little oddities, but other than that, like, I actually really like this. And it's a nice toy. It's a nice toy. It deserved to be remolded a few times. So this is all just the repaint side of things, so that's where everyone equated it to Universe, but that is such a small chunk of what Robot Masters was, and, like, we didn't get excited for this stuff. Okay, seeing an IndyCar as Mirage for the first time since G1, okay, that was exciting to us as collectors, but what was really getting us excited was this was the first time that brand new toys were coming out for classic characters. And that started, of course, with Optimus Prime. Now, keep in mind, 2004, we had just gotten MP01 Convoy, which was way out of the price range for a lot of collectors at the time. So to have a smaller G1 Optimus Prime suddenly become available with modern articulation was a huge deal. Like this, everyone went nuts over this because they could finally get a new Optimus Prime toy. Keep in mind, the last time Prime got a toy to this point was Generation 2. So you're talking over a decade since G1 Optimus Prime had a proper toy that fans could obtain. Now, they still had to import it from Japan, but hey, that's a small price to pay for something you'd always wanted back then. There was no Classics line at the time. There was no Universe, Chug, whatever you want to call it. This was the G1 Prime toy for a lot of people for at least a few years. And you could tell it's not even the best. You could see how many gaps there are and how weird the vehicle mode looks. The robot mode does a few weird things, like the fact that his pelvis is now part of his hips, so it stretches and splays out in a weird way. But for what it was at the time, it was amazing. And we got so excited for this. And this wasn't even the most exciting one out of the whole release. We also got a brand new Starscream. And the big deal for this Starscream was he didn't have to dismantle anything to transform it. That alone was such a huge deal. It's not the best Starscream. We will admit that right away. The jet mode looks fine. The robot mode's proportions are that. They were trying to replicate the original G1 transformation scheme. So like the nose cone is like tucked into the torso, and those arms are supposed to fold in to take up the gap. It was basically what a lot of fans were saying at the time. Just make G1 toys again, but add articulation. It is important to note at this point that Robot Masters were pretty small. Like, even like by today's standards, they are not deluxe size. Like, they'd be like a little bit bigger than Cliff Jumper, a little bit smaller than Sideswipe here. So, today Hasbro would absolutely stick a $20 price point on it. But back then, they were very oddly sized. Somewhere between the it was Energy. We were around Energon at the time, so it was like halfway between the top of a deluxe and like the top of a Scout class figure. So right around there. They were very odd. But still, you could tell like this was super exciting. If you were a fan back then and you never got a chance for an articulated Starscream, here you go. Weird as it was. There wasn't a G1 Megatron in the line, tank or otherwise. No, instead, Swerve, we got a Beast Wars Megatron. And an odd one at that, so it made improvements over the original design because the tail could actually be removed and you could just have a normal hand. But what was weird, the weird part about it is it's trying to split the Deco tries to split the difference between the toy colors and the show colors. So you got a slightly more accurate Beast Wars Megatron out of this. The appeal was just that it was a small-sized Megatron. It was like a desk-sized Megatron that was, easier to keep around, not as cumbersome as the full-size, like, ultra-class Beast Wars toy. This one got repainted a lot over the years. There are cartoon-accurate versions of this toy now. Go seek them out. These were actually, like, really nice. These were actually pretty nice for their time. And, of course, we got a Primal to go with it. The Primal, again, was pretty good. You can see a little bit too exposed on the arms and all that. Okay, fine. But for its time, like, he had the shoulder cannons. He had his blades. He had the forearm guns. He had a lot going for him. It's, again, nice figures. Small, but nice. And, again, remember, this was 2004, so we were 8 years removed from Beast Wars and this toy being available. Yeah, so it was very cool to have a brand new one that was actually, like, smaller, more convenient. And then there was the one, let's see, now, Beast Megatron and Beast Convoy, as they ended up calling them. I had both of those. I regret selling them. The one I never had, and just kept putting off, was Lio Convoy. Of all characters, Lio Convoy also got a hold of one. Now, Lio Convoy was actually probably the most recent character to get a new figure in this line, because that was Beast Wars 2, so you're talking like 1997 around then. And again, like a little bit derpy in the lion mode, but for what it was at the time, it was actually pretty fun. A lot of people went nuts on this one. A lot of people loved this figure. Never got a hold of it, so I can't say why. But the more the less space I have in my life for displaying Transformers on shelves, the more I really appreciate having major characters in small sizes, which is another reason I wish I had not gotten rid of mine. This was weird. This is like Robot Masters new mold stuff was all about like an all-star lineup, like all these convoys, Starscream was back, like a lot, it was super cool just to be able to see major characters getting new figures and all kind of in the same size and scale with each other, which was also like, you could have those dream matchups. There is a cartoon. There is a 2-episode cartoon, like DVD, pack-in stuff, and it's like the most anime you ever seen Transformers, even though it's CGI, and not great CGI. This was 2004, and the CGI, I think, is worse than in Beast Wars. Figure that one out. The toy line, though, like, the toy line, I think, made up for it. But the cartoon, I think, is worth watching for how ridiculous it is. And last I checked, it's easy to find on YouTube. So go take a look. It's also, keep in mind, like, that was also the first time we gotten to see G1 Optimus Prime in full CG animation. It was the first time we got to see Star Saber in animated anything since the 90s. Super, super cool. Now, of course, I can't mention this line without mentioning my boy Star Saber also got a brand new figure. And aside from it being pretty accurate to the original transformation, it also included as much of the original gimmick as they could. You actually did have, like, the chest does come out and it does form Saber. I don't believe it. It didn't go far down to have, like, the Brain Master of Courage. Didn't get that small. Also, shout out TFU.info. Super handy site. But I loved this. And then, we got Victory Leo as well. Hello Masterpiece line. It's nice when both of them come out. Again, it was so cool. It was so cool because this was, if you were like me and Victory Saber was your holy grail, it was literally impossible for you to get back then. Now, okay, we got eBay. We've had a bunch circulating over the years. I could get one if I wanted to drop $300 for a Victory Leo and actually, like, combine Victory Saber in my collection. I could do that. Back then, this was such a cool option to have, and the fact that it all worked, even like the vehicle modes combined correctly. But as cool as this was, as cool as the vintage repaints were, and as cool as all these modern figures were, it was not the peak. The peak was just a remold, and the peak is something that I thought was one of the most clever ideas I've ever seen for a Transformer. And I think I still have mine. I can't remember if I sold it off or not. If I did, I'm a fool. But I think the king of this entire toy line is Reverse Convoy / Rebirth Megatron. This was the equivalent of G1 Megatron. It is using the Hero Megatron mold from G2. You'll notice there's an Optimus Prime head. It's a mean-looking one, but it's an Optimus Prime head, and that's the default head on the figure. When you go to transform it the normal way, that is what it looks like. And in the cartoon, it's cast as a convoy when he first shows up. And then he starts shooting people in the back. The head folds down, and this big cannon assembly, this brand new, like, shoulder cannon that was built in, folds out a secondary head with a tiny Decepticon logo on the collar, and yes, it is actually a Megatron. A Megatron with an Optimus Prime disguise mode. That is awesome. Oh my god, that was so cool. I wish the toy itself was better. The Hero Megatron mold has a lot of problems, especially the fact that there's nothing on the inside of the leg to keep him up on his feet. So he doesn't stand up well. The articulation's really weird because of, like, how big the front end of him is. But he is, like, a super fun figure, and I'm stunned. I'm stunned that this is the only toy that has ever done that. I'm stunned that there's no modern equivalent. I thought Titan's Return was going to give us the perfect version of this, right? You take that Titan's Return Megatron mold, you paint it in blue, you give it a optional Optimus Prime Titan Master head, and then you do the double dealer thing, where the tank mode has the visible Decepticon symbol, and only the tank mode has that, and then the jet mode has the only visible Autobot symbol, or the other way around, whichever way you want. I'm so shocked that they never did that. And it was such a cool figure, and maybe one day this gets revisited. One day when a G2 Megatron toy gets inevitably released, the full tank mode, the purple and green camo and all that, maybe this will be the retool that Hasbro has in mind. I can only hope, because I want this again. The toy line was short-lived. as you see, I was pulling references. Don't mind me. The toy line was short-lived. It's a very brief line, only lasted a little over a year, I think. And the molds themselves have gone on to get some repaints and redecos. I think TJOmega did the bulk work of that for the Beast figures at least. But this, you had to be there. This was one of those you had to be there. You know, nowadays a new Optimus Prime in G1 style is just, really, again. In 2004, this was exciting times. This got so many of us riled up and eager to dump money on Takara and pay any import price we could. So that's my look back at the Robot Masters toy line. It is an interesting little time capsule of what we had to play with back then, because we were still waiting for the options we have today. So, yeah. You know, I know a lot of people are sick of the G1 Primes and the same old characters on the shelves. Hey, be lucky you are collecting at a time when that is a thing, because this is what we had to collect, and you got it so much better today. Thank you guys for watching, and let me know in the comments below if there's an obscure Transformer line we want to take a look back at and give a few thoughts on, because there's some out there that deserve a little bit more love than they've been given over the years. So let me know, and I will see you next time. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.